here again with Noah Gartner, and I guess we'll just continue having conversations.
Yeah, let's do it.
So last time we were together, we had a conversation on the dual monitors and our desk setup.
Oh yeah.
Which I have switched over to.
Did you switch over?
I'm now just using my one monitor instead of both my laptop and my monitor, and it's much nicer. Although I feel really weird disconnecting, or when I'm reconnecting, I'm still in the I still go to open up my laptop, set it down, and then start plugging everything in. I'm gonna start using both, so that's been a little weird.
Yeah,
getting used to.
Yeah.
But just knowing that I need to just pull it out and set it down, it's gonna take a little bit of time.
It will become second nature.
So earlier today, I wrote down 2 questions that may or may not be the same.
Okay.
One of them is... Oh, actually, no, wait. That was a different one. I wrote down 3 questions. One being, how often do you change your opinion about something?
Oh, that's a good question.
I would say for me, all the time, I'll change it, depending on what's provided to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends on what it is. I don't know how to answer that.
I mean, I think a lot of people think that, I guess I don't know what people think, but my assumptions for the way people behave about opinions is that they don't like them to change, or they like to be able to expect what somebody's going to feel about something.
Yeah.
So the idea that your opinion is going to change all the time, or your preference for something, or just the way you feel about things, I kind of feel like that should be changing frequently.
I think it depends on how close that opinion is to the core of who you are.
Yeah.
If it's an opinion about how to do something, your opinion about monitors, or your preference about that can change. If it's work things, that should be changing all the time. There's a consistency you want to get to, but as you learn things, those things should be incorporated into how you do things.
Right.
It might not change your opinion on a higher level approach to things. That may take more time, but I guess it changes. To me, I can see things changing. Maybe it's the scope of the opinion, and how deeply rooted that is.
Yeah.
So one of my things, my deeply rooted beliefs, is that it's important to work really hard and just get shit done. That's how I grew up, and that's part of my core. It's I grew up on a farm in upstate New York, and all summer long and even during the school year, I had so much stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like my chores for the summer, I'm trying to give my son chores for the summer, and it's like, okay, you make dinner tonight, and you clean your room, and you mow the lawn, and I'm trying, but like my chores for like the summer are you paint all the barns by the end of the summer, and we had 20 acres of land. I had to like pull nettles out because we didn't want them in pastures, and it was just a little hobby farm, but still I had all of this stuff to do, and I had to like clean out all of the hay and all of the poop from the barns, and so, and to this day, like if I'm idle for too long, I don't know what to do with myself. And I found that like that part of my personality, I think I always have to be doing something and getting something done, worked very well with work. Like there's always something to get done, and I have a hard time saying no to people. So to me, that's how you get ahead. You're like, you get done what you need to get done, don't say no, and like help out everywhere you can, and that helped me get to, I don't know, where I am, which is where I am. But so to me, that like, and that's what I try to teach my kids, is like, you just, and it really impresses me when people are just always getting stuff done, and like getting done what needs to get done. Like, here's the things that we need to do to be successful. Like, do those things and get them done. I think that impresses me more than a lot of other things. But as far as that being the only thing, I mean, as if I think about how that opinion has sort of changed, is I grew up thinking if you work really hard and you do that, then you'll just move ahead.
Right.
But I also see that context is a huge thing too, and not everyone is afforded that same opportunity.
Right.
Like, so I know that it isn't just you work really hard and impress people that way and you'll move up. You have to be in the right situation to start with, and that takes luck. It takes who you are, unfortunately, and who, you know, where your place is in society to start with. So that's kind of shifted that a bit. It's not just work real hard, and if you don't, then, you know, you deserve not to move up, kind of thing. So, but I mean, that, I guess that's not going to change so much. I still believe that if I work really hard and just keep getting stuff done, then I'll be successful, and wherever I go.
What do you consider success then? Like, what is becoming successful?
You're on it. These are good. To me, like, successful in a career means that I get to be in a place that I want to be, doing things that I enjoy, and sort of being able to sustain some sort of life from that. So I don't think there's not like any bar outside of that that I want to hit. I mean, it used to be that success was like how high I could go up and how much money could be made, because that's, you know, that's what I always would strive for. I didn't have like a whole lot of anything growing up. Like I still, one day I'm gonna have the original Jordans, just to say I have them, because didn't even have like the knockoffs. And that was when was that? Like when it was way back. And also, I want to say on recording that Michael Jordan ruined my childhood as a Knicks fan. Even though I wanted his sneakers. Anyway, so that was like a thing. But making all the money and getting, moving up in a job. But now being successful is like, I just want to be in a place that appreciates what I'm doing, and allows me to do what I want to do, and I feel like I can get stuff done, and people acknowledge that I'm getting stuff done, and I can have a house for my family, and I can go home to it, and like not worry so much, and then do things that I like to do on the side. That's all I want to do. And then, I think that's like the bar, and that's all I need to do. If I have a place to go to that I feel good about, I think to me, that's being successful. And that has changed. That opinion has changed over the years. And I guess that's also like informed by where I've gotten to, maybe. And I feel like I'm like rambling, and talking too much. But I think it's easier for me to say that as far as what success is. After like moving up the ladder at SAP, I got up there and I saw what that was, and now I don't think that I want to do that again.
Do you think it took reaching the quote-unquote top for you to change your perspective on what success was? Or do you think you had that your idea of success you always had? That doesn't sound right.
I don't know. I think that always changed. Depending on, maybe it just changes all the time, depending on your circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, success, I don't know, I guess I'm not sure if I would consider it success, but there's always been a sense of like, make enough money to be able to do the things you want to do.
Yeah.
Whether that means, move up in a rank or whatever, but to be able to make enough money to, cover your priorities. But I don't know if I would consider that success. I don't think I ever thought of myself as being successful with the more money I made. But I don't think I've ever really thought of what success for me looks like.
Yeah.
Outside of doing well, whatever form that takes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if can you be successful in multiple streams? Like you could have like multi-threaded success.
Sure. I don't see why not.
And you could have different successes in a single thread.
Sure. I mean, I guess at that point it's like setting goals, and you're just setting small goals.
Yes,
like
you can be successful at that.
Reaching a goal.
Yeah.
Or success is the goal.
Yeah.
So by accomplishing those preset, requirements, is you then being successful,
right? Because
you've reached that one, and then the next one.
Yep. Yeah.
But it is interesting that a lot of people, it takes getting to the point at which you don't enjoy something to where you then look back and say,
Yes.
You know what? I don't want to do that.
That is so true.
This is no longer success for me.
Yeah. And actually, if I go back to the question you asked before, I think had I not gotten to that certain level where I thought I was successful, then I'd probably still be reaching for that same kind of thing to feel successful.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it does take getting to a point and then looking at where that is and either saying, yeah, I feel successful now, I'm good, I want to keep doing this, is there another bar to get to, or yeah, that was great, but maybe something else is better or just as good.
So then the other two, which I think are related to each other and possibly the same question, is the first one is there something about your profession that you don't think is talked about enough? Or, the other question, are there any controversial topics involving your role? Which I feel like those are kind of related to each other, just in the sense that controversial things aren't typically talked about, or conversations are steered away from that. But I guess controversial could be interpreted many different ways.
Yeah, I guess so.
But do you think there is something about your profession or in your role that you don't think is talked about enough?
I don't know. I mean, the only thing that, as far as controversial is concerned, or I don't know, it all depends on, I guess, context again. But I think any of what I see, there's a lot of discussions that happen, I feel like, on process and manual testing as a thing that's lumped together, and then automation and all of what goes with that lumped together, and rarely do they mix. I know there is organizations that separate the two out, and there's discussions about whether or not that's a good idea. But I don't see those two things talked about as a larger thing. And I think, to me, they're all part of the same. So, and this may be a controversial thing, but the way I tend to approach testing is as a testing problem. This is something that needs to be solved, and we have whatever it is that we're trying to release, and there's things that need to be tested for whatever that thing is, and that's the problem that needs to be solved. And then so from there you go down, so okay, what are the solutions to this problem, and then you use all the tools that you have that best fit whatever it is that we're trying to solve. So, and that's manual testing, that's exploratory testing, that's automation, that's UI automation, that's API testing, that's unit testing, all the way down the stack. And I think that if we separate the automation from the process and manual stuff, if we don't make those all the same thing as tools to solve that testing or that quality problem, not like a problem as there's an issue with it, but like that's something that needs a solution. Then we tend to, and I do this too because it's more fun, but like if you start from this has to get automated, we have a feature, we have to automate it, then the focus becomes, we'll do the automation thing, let's figure out all the things that we can automate as a separate thing and not baked into the context of the whole. Rather than saying, here's all of the testing that we need to be doing, which is best served as exploratory testing, which is best served as Selenium, rest assured, all the way down. And if we keep those separate, then the automation becomes the problem in and of itself, rather than a tool to solve the larger problem. And when that happens, there's distractions in that, and there's risk that we're going to leave out things from the larger picture of what needs to be solved. So when we start having solving problems of automation as the priority, rather than using that as a tool to solve the larger thing, then I see risk in that. And I think, I don't know if that's exactly what you were looking for, like what that, but I know we're just like chatting about things. Whatever starts the conversation.
Well, either that or like whatever your feelings are on that thing.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking, and I think it comes from like, that's just one thing that doesn't, I guess that connection of the whole thing doesn't get talked about together.
Yeah,
and I know there's like reasons for, there's things that need to be talked about in isolation, so that you can come up with solutions on those specific things and not distract. If you put everything into a huge bucket, then you're not going to focus on anything.
Right.
But I think it does a disservice when we separate the things. So.
Well, yeah, and I would say coming at it from the problem of, this is the problem, what tools can we use to solve it, and then from there have that influence the conversation versus here's the problem, how are we going to automate it?
Yes.
Or because then you've already like taken your direction and there's nothing to like influence it at that point.
Yes.
Instead of thinking of it as a tool, you're thinking of it as the only solution for it.
Right, and then that becomes the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
Not the quality of the feature.
I like it.
All right.
I think with that question, I'm trying to see if there's like, because if you don't ask what things aren't talked about, they're probably not going to be
They're not ever going to be talked about.
So I'm curious if like anybody that, we end up recording is going to be able to come up with something that isn't talked about that I've never even thought about because it just doesn't
come up.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be very curious about that. I guess we can do this. We can try it.
Well, we could try it. You can always cut and slice and dice. And
all right. Number 1. When are you done testing?
Oh, this is a lightning round question?
Yeah. Can you give one answer?
One answer?
One word answer for it?
No.
Okay.
Because if I say never, then I'm gonna hate myself because I hate that answer. How about when I feel that we've appropriately mitigated the risks for whatever feature we're releasing?
Sounds good.
All right. It's a one sentence answer.
That's fine. Number 2, should I can't even read. Should QA become developers?
If they want to.
All right. Number 3, what is the difference between UX and QA?
What?
UX and QA.
UX and QA? 2 letters?
Yeah, what's the difference between them? Like user experience and quality assurance.
This is like apples and oranges.
So they're very different.
Yeah.
All right.
Like user experience is something that you would put into what you want to solve for as a QA engineer.
Okay.
But
I mean, you could say that they're just very different.
They're just different.
All right.
Apples and oranges.
That's fine. What does a PM do that a QA doesn't? Or differences between PM and QA?
Oh, this is not lightning round. We've had like 5 or 6 conversations about this, and like how like do we turn QA like, as far as planning and product managing and managing testing.
Because there's like a lot of overlap of some of the roles of what a PM does, some of the roles of what a developer does, some of the roles of what I think somebody said a business analyst does, some design roles, some UX roles.
Yeah.
We do a lot of bits of all of those.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of overlap, I think. Like I've seen a lot of times QA can become an advocate for the product manager.
Sure.
So a product manager has a thing to, like, almost like a business owner. Like, here's your squad, this is your business. Treat it like your business and build the thing for your customers. And we advocate for that as for like the quality of what we're putting out. Make sure that the PM knows what they want, and we help to make sure that everyone's on board to make sure that they get what they want. And then that can spiral into all sorts of things about who actually owns all of the things, but that quality advocate piece, I think is important.
What steps do you take? What steps do you take to get yourself into the QA mood or mode, whichever you prefer?
That's
or do you have steps?
Yeah, I don't have steps.
I don't think I have steps either.
Depends what I want to solve.
I think normally for me it's just there's something to do and I start doing it.
Yes.
I don't think I take any steps of like getting myself into the
I make
zone.
lists of things that I need to get done and I go through them and then I put my earbuds in and
like
have at it. Yeah.
Prepare your activity list, your execution list.
I write 50-step test cases and go through them. No, I don't.
Do you know what you do?
Do I know what I do?
Yeah, do you know what you do?
Yes.
All right. I didn't ask for you to explain.
Yes, exactly.
Do you?
I do.
All right. What is QA's role?
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I think to this is not lightning.
No.
I mean, we could go on. We'll be here all evening.
These are.
Yeah, we should earmark that for another chat.
Yeah.
Because I think. Yeah, I can talk about it forever and probably make some really good friends and make some real strong enemies.
That's fair. What does QA own?
Whatever's in front of them at any particular moment.
How often do you use workarounds?
Often. It depends on. Yeah, it depends on what it is. If you're talking about, so here's an interesting thing. I'll have a little bit more to say about this. This is one of the bigger risks of having a long-standing project. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about workarounds in like automation, and that I do all the time because I'll just hack at whatever I need to get done, and that is probably not the best way to do things, and I'll completely admit that. So I do that. But if you're talking about the application that is under test, the longer this is one of the risks. If you have a very long-standing project, those workarounds, if you have a bug that you can work around, typically that's a minor thing and gets thrown on the backlog, right? Even if it's like annoying, you can work around it. What happens with those is if it's 3 months of you working around something, that workaround becomes the primary workflow, and you forget that it's really annoying. So then like 3 months down the line, you plop that in front of a user and they look at it and they had that same initial, this is really annoying, and you just ruined their UX. So anyway.
I would agree. And then this one kind of relates to that one. When do you find your vision getting blurry or stale? As in, when do you find yourself missing things because you've been too close to a product for too long?
Yeah, I don't know. I know what you're talking about. I don't know if there's a line that gets crossed, but that's exactly that's what I was bringing up just now.
I would say in Jordan's conversation we talked about, I think it was Jordan's, we talked about the idea of like getting comfortable in your role. And so like once you hit that level of becoming comfortable, you start to, things become just kind of automatic and they just kind of pass by without actively like thinking about it.
And that actually, I know when that happens, and that plays into the same sort of thing. Like if I'm idle for too long, like if just like we talked about way earlier, I always have to be doing something and getting something done. If I take a vacation day at my house and I have nothing to do, I'll start pacing around my house, and it drives me crazy. So the same thing, if I stop learning here, like if I'm doing something that's the same, I feel like there's no difference between doing the same rote stuff every day that you're comfortable with and just being idle. Because you don't have to think about anything, and then I start getting antsy. So I guess maybe that's it. If I start feeling antsy, then I know I've crossed that line.
All right, we'll switch back. All right. One of the topics they have is number of QA on a team. What are your thoughts on how many QA should or I guess by saying QA on a team is like people in that type of role.
Sure, yeah.
Technically there's teams that have 0, but that's because everybody else ideally is taking on that role. So how many people do you feel should be in that role on a team?
This is something where I've had a change of opinion.
All right. Full circle, all the way back.
Yes, exactly. And I think you asked me 10 years ago, and I think I was strong advocate for a one-to-one dev to
or engineer to
developer to tester. And now I don't even know that there's a ratio. It's just, I think you need to, I think it's much, much lower. But I think it's, you just adjust based on who's doing what and what their roles are and how quickly you're trying to get things out. Like, I think having one person on a team in QA is sufficient. I mean, if that team gets huge, then, I mean, maybe that's the answer. Like, if you have a team where you've got one QA person and you're not able to keep up with work in progress, then maybe the team is too big. How's that for like QA centric living? Like, you need to base the size of your team around having one QA person, and then that QA person can become less like the QA column on a Jira board is test everything that's here, and you have that one person who owns what, not the gatekeeper for quality, but like managing what all of that is for all of the people on the team. So if you can manage testing and quality across that whole team and get everyone on board doing like what it is that they do that best fits their role, and then you do what you need to do also that best fits your role and how you see it, then I think that's perfect.
I think me of right now, my thinking is that there should be a minimum of one person who is an advocate for quality, but it should be every person on the team is an advocate for quality.
Correct.
So a minimum of one, an ideal and maximum of everybody.
Everyone.
I think that's my thinking.
As long as you've created a culture where people can look out for everyone else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
you can't
that's
just
where
say
the advocacy is that everybody is equally invested in the quality of the product, so everyone should be responsible to look out for each other.
If that's the case, I'm okay with that. Yeah.
But there needs to be a maximum or a minimum of one. There should at least be one person that is capable of doing that, but that's not ideal.
Yes.
It should be everybody.
Yes. But I also think it's important to have somebody who's driving what that means for the team.
So you mean one person like outside of that? That is like the person that determines what the advocates should be advocating?
Yes, that makes sense.
Which I would figure that would be like the business direction advocates, or the whoever's providing the direction of the product or company or whatever. They are then that person that says, this is what we want.
Yeah.
And then the people underneath that are the ones that then advocate, this is what we said, let's make sure that it's that or better.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm good with that.
Right.
Yeah, as long as, and I guess the only stipulation is that, like, if you say everyone is responsible for it, they are aware of what that actually means.
How do you think you would go about?
And that's not just saying you test your stuff, right? Because that's the first thing that gets dropped is test your stuff. It's like, I'll just put this up into. It's okay. You need to be accountable. I guess maybe you need to be accountable to yourself and the rest of the team. If you can create that culture, then I think it's fair.
Sure.
But I think I really believe that you're gonna have much more. You'll have greater success if you have somebody who's dedicated to that QA role on a team, who can put those pieces together and drive those conversations with everybody else on the team.
That is interesting. What do you think causes that need or want for a single person to take on that role to not just advocate but also like reinforce those ideals? Like why do you think that is?
Because I think
important?
People, you want someone who wants to do that,
right?
And someone who is comfortable doing that, and someone whose like default mode of being is that. Because people long term will eventually gravitate to what they like to do, and especially when things get stressful, the first thing people do is go back to what they do best. So if someone's in a real tight deadline and you got a product manager saying, I need this done, you promised me it was going to be done in 2 weeks, what are you telling me it's 4 weeks? And so when things like that happen, people will always go back to their default state. And if their default state is just churning stuff out, then that's what's going to happen. Right. Even if you get to a point where everyone is focused on quality, if you don't have anyone on the team who's has a default state of that, then you're more than likely going to have things get dropped along the way. Because when things get stressful, or you get to a point where you're just grooving, and maybe things get stale, then you could also go back to your default state of this is what I do. Hey, everything is golden. I'm doing great. I'm going to go back to what I like to do for a while. And so that's the core of why I think if you have someone whose default state is that, then there's always someone who's going to be looking out for those things.
So what I'm thinking about right now is the fact that, like, for me, the more things I've experienced, the more products I've used, the more, things I've been exposed to, I guess this kind of goes back to like what is success for you, but like for me, the more things I've experienced and more things I've been exposed to, the more effective I am at my job, because I now have I have access to more tools to pull from.
Yeah.
Of like, I've seen bad products, and so I know what not to do, or I know what things I don't want, and that kind of drives my gut feelings on when using something. It either feels good or it doesn't feel good. So I'm curious how you then. I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say.
I mean, I can see. So that just sparked a thought. I have a handful of former colleagues of mine that I worked with for, I don't know, wasn't quite 10 years. But they built a product from scratch, and long story short, because of business and things, the best of who we had in New York got let go because the office was expensive and they were all expensive, and someone wanted to make themselves look good as far as the financials to our parent company and all that stuff. But regardless, four of them took off, and they spent 2 years building something as a direct competitor to what they built before. So with that, they took all of that knowledge of that business. They took all of that knowledge of all of the headaches that they sort of coded themselves into a corner with, all of the process things that they hated, all of the things that they really liked, and they put all of that into a new product.
A direct competitor.
A direct competitor. It's the same. It does the same exact thing, only better. And they took out all of the gotchas. They took out all of the things that made them less efficient, and they put it into here. And they've been going for 8 years, maybe, ish, maybe 10 years. And they don't have QA. They have it's a different type of company. They only have 6 engineers. They have a gajillion customer service reps. This is a lot of what they do is it's data entry and it's data intake, and it's software as a service, but there's a lot of stuff on the back end that they have to configure. Like they get data from insurance carriers and they pump it into the system, and so there's a lot of stuff on the client side, but they know that business inside and out, and they also know how to develop that thing based on however 12 years of experience they had before they got dropped. So and what you were saying about the things that I know about, I have that experience, and so that is a situation where they know exactly what they're doing, they know exactly what they have to build, and they're building it the right way, and I don't know that they're gonna need QA. They've been around for, 8 years, I guess, I don't know, but they're growing, they're taking customers away from the original, they're flying, they're doing great. So so that said, I guess they have what they need to do in mind, and they're making it work. So
that's interesting, because that kind of makes me wonder what is that difference between a company or a team where they don't have a dedicated person in the QA role versus a team that does have a person in that QA role.
Yeah.
And what are those differences that says why does this team succeed when they don't have that.
Yeah.
And this team succeeds when they do have that.
Yeah. And I think there's a distinction that should be made. A lot of the workflow coming into the system goes through customer service reps, right? And so, and there are a lot of like custom solutions baked into this thing. And before any customers get into the system, there's like a transition period of we're going to set up your data, we're going to get you out. And it's not, I mean, the company I sort of grew up with, that process took like 6 months. This takes 2 weeks. But there is that initial setup. So there's like this 2-week buffer of we have these new features and these things, we're going to give them to the customer service people first. And the way it works is that they're almost beta testers. So, and if they're doing custom solutions, they're going to find issues with changes to APIs if they don't have the right contracts, or if they're making changes behind the scenes, or if that API is new and it's not working. That gets found out because of that buffer of the customer service reps.
Right.
So, and they're all technical. They're all like, most of them are very heavy into SQL, and so they know the data model backward and forward. They update tables and they do custom things for their customers. So there is like, they've become the sort of advocate for quality because they have customers that they have to answer to directly. So there's no dedicated QA people, but there's someone who is taking on that role that's outside of the engineers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It is 5:44. Which is
4:45?
4:44.
4:44. Okay.
Wait,
You
what
scared
did I
me.
say?
You said 5. I was
Did I
like,
say
I'm
5:44?
gonna miss all my trains.
Oh, sorry. 4:44. Let's see. So after that topic, my next one is style of test.
Style of test.
Yes.
That's a
I
question.
assume.
Question mark?
No, maybe. I think the idea of that is like, either are there styles?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's specific types of
Yes,
testing.
you're talking about styles of
but
functional testing.
styles of testing.
Uh-huh.
Do you have a style?
Do I have a style?
Yeah. What is your style of testing? I guess I might need to think more on what exactly makes something a
What
style.
makes
I guess
something
it's
a
just the way
style.
you do something.
Yeah.
So you have the Noah style.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you think it? Well, let's just say you have the Noah style of testing.
Yes.
How different is your style compared to other styles of your experience in?
I've probably changed styles, I guess. I don't know. I tend to focus on small pieces more than anything, rather than the long, drawn out scenarios. Which is why I always push for having small bits of features dropped in my lab. I'd rather have a developer drop me like 3 tiny stories in a morning and then 2 more in the afternoon, than wait till Friday and get the entire feature and then have to walk through and do like all the workflows for that. So, yeah. So I guess my style is to look at specific components and functions and pieces and test those and do all the things that happen with that. And I always have, not so much here because there's not as much digging into logs, but like learning how things work by doing things and digging into the logs. So now I can look at the console and I can look at the network tab to figure out how things are working, and that way I can kind of base what I do next on how those things work. So yeah, I mean, I just poke at small things and small components to make sure they're working properly, but then like look behind the scenes as I figure out how they work to find other risks and then build on tests that way, I guess. That's typically how I roll. And then like the larger workflow things tend to just end up as like exploring as different kinds of users. And then some of those end up as the longer like use case automation things that we stick in. So
right.
You have to answer that now too.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
I can see it churning. I just don't want to get you to get away with not answering it.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking what exactly my style is, because I guess I'm thinking of it like learning styles. Like there's physical, there's visual, there's audio, like those types of things, like the way you do something. I can't think about.
That'd be interesting.
I don't know if there's I know there's like early childhood development stuff on like how kids learn through doing, and they're exploring their environments and whatnot, but I don't know if there's names for those specific things that they're doing that I'm trying to like compare that to, because at least for me, a lot of my style is exploration based.
Yeah.
Like I'm very much like, I don't like, I guess my style is I don't like to be confined to one place. So
yes, that's very you.
Sometimes prefer getting larger pieces versus smaller pieces. I mean, I will admit that smaller pieces are easier to test completely, just because of the fact that they're smaller, so there's a lot less like things interacting with each other. But in terms of like, if I could choose to have like, here is the feature versus here is a piece of the feature, I would go more towards having the whole feature, so that I can like explore all around it. I'm not saying that it's better in terms of like business, because then you're having to like build the whole thing before anything is done with it, but in terms of what I prefer to do and what I guess I'm more used to doing is having a whole quote unquote complete thing that I can then explore and like point out all the things that I see. Write down like a big list of, saw this and that, this and these things, and like that's the kind of stuff. Like when I was exploring one of the areas you were working on, and just writing down, like that was I didn't know how complete the work was, but to not have those constraints of like only this, and I could say, well, I'm just going to go everywhere.
Yeah.
And then just write down everything I see without needing to make an individual ticket for every single little thing that I see, and just be able to write like one line of like, saw this when I was doing this.
Yep.
And like that kind of stuff is something I would say is closer to what my style is purely like a pure exploration based test
I can see
style.
That. And it also goes back to one of the things you're really good at is asking the right questions of whatever it is. And it's something you like to do is ask those questions. And I mean, there's 55 generic questions, but also like when you focus on a specific thing, you know what questions to ask of the feature or the larger module or chunk of the app that you're looking at. So yeah, that totally makes sense to me.
I wonder if we should come up with some sort of name for test styles or like define those things. Although, I don't know. I guess once you start defining them, then you kind of like, you then have to like put them into boxes.
Is it better to not be aware?
Or
not?
I
That's
think
an open question.
My feelings on that would be, I think people should be more aware of the differences between styles.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people should be aware.
Okay.
They don't need names, but I feel like people should be aware because it kind of goes back to, I think, our last conversation, or maybe it was with somebody else, about like, how do you know what you're missing if you don't even know it exists?
Mm-hmm.
So by not knowing that there are these, like if you're only ever aware of the style of your approach to something, like you're not even just knowing that there are other styles will then influence your style, or could influence your style, and your style then evolves into a new thing of
More
like,
complex thing.
well, there are different ways to do this. Why don't I try some new things? And then you start developing this more unique way of doing something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like that.
So, yeah, I guess not naming it, but becoming aware of different approaches to things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
How
Should
much
we
more time you got?
Wrap up, and so we don't bore people with my. Maybe let's just start asking you questions, and then.
Well, maybe one of these we could turn the tables and have it just be.
That'll work.
Other people asking me questions, which is perfectly fine. Well, I mean, we can end with that. Are there any questions you have for me? Although that does feel more like I'm interviewing you for a job.
We already did that.
Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, how many hours am I supposed to work this week?
What does an average day look like? What tools do you use?
Mm-hmm. How many vacation days do we get?
Still not entirely comfortable with vacation days.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, you're not.
Yeah. Do you? What do you
I don't
got?
think so.
You got anything? For
I got it. I'll write some down for next time.
Sure.
And then we'll have a
proper
do a round
exchange.
robin, a proper exchange. Yes.
That could work.
All right. I'll do that.
Cool. Well, thanks for the chat.
Of course. Thank you. These are fun.